different story. But I think where it's gotten just kind of ridiculous is you have collectives, and we've done a lot of stories at The Athletic about agents working on deals where maybe there's a 3-star, 4-star player getting 6 figures. Well, the idea that some deal is being done where a coaching staff does not know or hasn't had some kind of feedback or direction for these money people to go buy a recruiter, do a deal, is preposterous to me. Because all of a sudden you're going to spend all this money on a recruit that they don't really want. That doesn't make any sense, right? Because if that's the case, what's going to happen when this player shows up and you're like, we don't think he can play? Yeah, but we spent $700,000 for him. That's ridiculous, right? So for some of the coaches, and I think Jimbo has kind of talked about this in the past, it just doesn't make any sense.
Here's Jimbo Fisher firing back at Nick Saban. Take a listen to this.
It's a shame that we have to do this. It's really despicable. It's despicable that somebody can say things about somebody and an organization. More importantly, 17-year-old kids. You're taking shots at 17-year-old kids and their families. That they broke state laws. That they're all money. We bought every player on this group. We never bought anybody. No rules were broken. Nothing was done wrong. It was all in the way we do things, the ethics in which we do things. And these families, it's despicable that a reputable head coach could come out and say this when he doesn't get his way or things don't go his way.
Now, he also made it really personal. I want to play this one and have you respond. This is the second, Jimbo, really going after Saban.
Some people think they're God. Go dig into how God did his deal. You may find out about a guy that a lot of things you don't want to know. We built him up to be the czar of football. Go dig into his past.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
Saban's never been busted by the NCAA.
No, and look, the one thing, and you brought this up about Ole Miss before, and back in the Hugh Freeze days, there were a lot of 4- and 5-star guys that they didn't get, that, in-state guys, they went to another school. Maybe they went to a rival school. So you start to sit there and wonder, as like, okay, only these people are breaking the rules, but these other people who are thriving and getting some, they're recruiting a largely the same pool of players. So all of a sudden you're telling me that these other guys are going to be open to 7 figures, but no. None of that's going on at other places or whatever that's competing and beating them. That's not realistic, right? And I think where Jimbo's talking about, he's putting it on Saban as making these allegations against the 17-year-olds and their families. I mean, let's be realistic. Jimbo's taking it personal because he's saying you cheated. A lot of times I think, and this has gone on, I go back to the Arizona State scandal that is still going on, at Herm Edwards' program, where it started getting out because a lot of former assistants would talk about it, but also recruits would talk about to other coaches what was going on. A lot of times recruits don't know exactly what the rules are right now.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't necessarily think, if they see it as NIL or how it's interpreted, as inducements, who's boosters. I don't even think, the NCAA has tried to define who boosters are, and it's a very, it's a different threshold. But I don't necessarily think if you're talking about 16, 17-year-old recruits and their families, I'm not sure they're versed in that.
Yeah.
I don't think they're necessarily on the phone with compliance about every person that interacts with them. Whereas I think in the case of these coaches, especially at this level, come on, what's going on here?
Yeah, now it's legal, NIL. All right, Mario Cristobal, Miami, because USC, because of the Oklahoma battle with USC, Lincoln Riley's making a lot of noise. Plus, we're in L.A., which is the biggest, media market out here. Miami, what are they doing?
So Mario Cristobal was at a place at Oregon where obviously Phil Knight money, and they're obviously very active in NIL and a lot of things, but best facilities are arguably and every resource you could need. He was not going to even consider, going anyplace else unless the powers that be at Miami ramped up commitment dramatically. And he waited till after his season was over, and then all of a sudden they made a dramatically different commitment in terms of what they were able to do for him, staff-wise, facility-wise. Miami used to be the place that would puff out its chest that we don't want the kids who are going to be swayed by fancy facilities and different things like that. Well, that was 20 years ago.
Kids like that stuff.
Kids like that stuff now. And Mario Cristobal, who used to be one of the ones who would talk about that when he was a young assistant coach there, now he knows what matters. They're in on the photo shoots. They're in on all this other stuff. And Miami's commitment, you see it in, like you said, there are a lot of parallels to USC, right? Big marketplaces. There are places that there's a competition for.
They almost feel like USC and Miami are the only two college programs that feel like 25% NFL. They kind of have an NFL vibe to them.
Well, they're also the way they've operated even schematically. Miami, back in the Schnellenberger days was really one of the first ones to go wide open pass when everything else was the wishbone days, right? I mean, just think about the resources when you can have a Hall of Famer on staff, right? Somebody
Yes.
I mean, that Miami was able to bring in. I mean, this never had. They beat Michigan for Josh Gaddis, who just won the Broyles Award as the nation's top assistant. He leaves there to come to Miami. There was a lot of it's just so much different now than what it used to be. USC obviously has always had money. USC has always had boosters. Miami has been kind of a shoestring operation with less than facilities. And so to see that now turning, and obviously they're sitting in the biggest recruiting hotbed in the country, but he has taken, Cristobal worked under Jimmy Johnson, but he also worked under Nick Saban. And everything we talked about for this story, a lot of it is in the Saban blueprint.
So I talked to a well-connected consultant of college football, and he said, listen, Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams, with no transfers, would have won 7 games in the Pac-12. It's terrible. He said those two that's McVay Stafford. You can have
in the moment for Jimbo to blow back the way he did. I mean, to me, what happened this morning with Jimbo Fisher, the nuttiest press conference I've ever seen in the SEC was the Bobby Petrino neck brace after the infidelity, the motorcycle ride. That was a circus. This, with Jimbo Fisher, the things he said about Nick Saban, who, by the way, he worked for at LSU, was a mentor to him.
Yeah.
He threw a lot of allegations out there, and the things he talked about, despicable, and Nick Saban thinks he's God. And just the fact that, when Saban is, bought every player, I think there is, for Jimbo, plausible deniability to go, every player, that's not true. But I think when you talk to a lot of people in football and a lot of people in college football who are connected, they're like, Jimbo, the Jimbo side of this, the way he started going, and, there were a lot of people going, whoa, Jimbo, pump the brakes on this too. We know how you guys, like the honor among thieves mantra, as SEC coach put it to me this morning, that used to be something they would protect in the SEC. That went out the window last night, and it got blown off the map this morning when Jimbo stood in front of the mic.
Well, years ago, I was told that Ole Miss was cheating, and Alabama, I was told, had called the NCAA and said they're buying players. In fact, I was told that Saban, if he could not get an early commitment from a Mississippi player in the state, he would quit because he felt they would just buy them. Well, we found out Ole Miss was buying players and was cheating. Now we're hearing, this is the strongest rumors I have heard since Ole Miss about a program just buying players. Now, the NIL makes a lot of this stuff legal, right? So I've heard a lot of stuff about Texas A&M, but I don't go on the air with it because what do I know? So here's the Saban bite. Last night, Bruce was discussing. Here it is.
I mean, we were second in recruiting last year. A&M was first. A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and likeness. All right, we didn't buy one player. All right, but I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that in the future because more and more people are doing it.
That sounds like, to me, as Nick's in front of boosters, a plea for more money.
Yeah, it might be. And I think they bought every player. Again, I think there's what's happened now, and I had this big conversation probably like 3 days ago with a college coach who said people are talking about tampering and how big of an issue that is. And this person said one of the issues that's really gotten crazy is now agents have gotten so involved where they're shopping recruits around. NIL, to a lot of people, stands for now it's legal, right? And so what used to be, when this was thought it was going to happen a year ago, because this hasn't even been, NIL hasn't even been around for a full year, has been, this is going to name, image, and likeness for the players in the program. What it has turned into in a lot of ways is desperate boosters whose programs maybe haven't won the way they wanted to or have fallen off, that they are going to have their collectives shop around, and agents are shopping around 4- and 5-star recruits to say, hey, what will you pay us? They will put a kid on a plane to go to different schools who they think have a lot of money and are desperate to land some 4- and 5-star recruit, hoping maybe he will be their Cam Newton. And then it's created a feeding frenzy, right? And so
Jordan Addison, the receiver from Pitt, is he involved? Like, has it become a feeding frenzy? Texas, Bama, USC, do you hear that?
Oregon. I mean, to some degree. Now, what's interesting on that part is, so you have a Caleb Williams connection. It's not necessarily with the coaching staff that may be formally tampering. If it's, from everything I've heard, if it's just a player talking, that's different.
Yep.
That's a different threshold. Now, if there's some kind of paper trail on text message